Hello and welcome to another movie fix and update from Double O Productions. This time we're going back to 1987 and the movie is Robocop, regarded as one of the best sci-fi films ever made, and like me, if you're a fan of Robocop you've probably watched it many hundreds of times. This is an exquisitely crafted movie. No Robocop fan will deny that fact. Now, I saw this movie when I was 10 years of age, and this was my introduction to the R-rated movie, and this film blew my mind. It kept me riveted. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I'd never seen violence or language or sadism like it, and it stuck with me since that day in 1988. However, in this video we're going to look at some of the flaws, some of the little errors that exist in the film, which ordinarily you wouldn't see, but having watched it many hundreds of times, they're the sort of errors that you notice every single time. In fact, you anticipate them before they come on screen. So that moves us on to the first shot. When Lewis and Murphy's car is shot by the criminals, the car moves around the side and the gunshots have disappeared from the windscreen. This is a small continuity error, but one that is noticed every time once you know it's there. So we're going to start off by motion tracking the vehicle, where we choose a pixel at one point on the screen and then track it in After Effects. Once we've done a motion track, we can go back to the frame and isolate the gunshot itself, and we're going to bring that in as a PNG image file and allow the motion tracker to do its job. As you can see here, it is on the screen, but we now need to extract a portion of the van and composite that back over itself to hide the gunshot before it is revealed as it comes around the side. Now, if we look at that shot again, we'll notice there's some dust and some smoke, so we're going to replicate that by adding a shape at a low opacity, and here it is in the final shot. Now this moves us on to Murphy in the hospital. This is really not an error that needs to be fixed, but it's one that once you've seen you can't unsee. As they lift him from the stretcher and they place him down and they put the ventilator mask on his face, you'll notice that he blinks. It's only a frame or two, but you really notice it. So we're going to go in and extract a couple of frames of his eye when it's open, and we're going to pop that back on. But using Photoshop, we're going to use a brush with a dark color as an overlay option and paint on the shadow that naturally forms from the ventilator mask. So if we watch it back again, this is the shot before and after, before and after. Now this moves us on to the firing range. When we're introduced to Robocop, and it's done through this great sequence where we hear his gun and then we see his gun. On his second or third shot, the gun jams and no shots are fired. Again, it's one that you will notice once it's been pointed out. So we're going to extract a few frames of the gunfire from later in the shot. We're going to take those frames and place them over the shot of the gun that isn't firing, and frame by frame match its position. But it doesn't end there, because on the ceiling, when the gun fires, you get some light reflection from the muzzle flash. We're going to go back and extract a few frames of the muzzle flash and put that back over, and then the shot will be complete. This moves us on to the first shot of the tracker. The tracker is that handheld device. Now, what we think is the best thing to do here, although it doesn't necessarily need to be changed, but if you look at the tracker, it's basically a physical object that has had the streets etched and painted onto it, and they've drilled a hole and put a small red LED in the center. I'm sure at the time they would have liked this to have been some sort of digital display. So we're going to go and find something that looks a little bit more like a cityscape or a city block. And we found this wireframe image, which we're going to use a portion of it, because it's 1987 and they didn't really have LCD displays even then. So we have to keep the technology looking as though it had been produced in 1987. So we figured that some sort of 3D rendering wouldn't be anything more complicated than a basic wireframe. So we go back and we track the hand tracker frame by frame. Then we bring in our image of the city block, and we're going to allow the motion tracker to insert it and move with the hand. Then we have to obviously put the casing back over, and that's been masked off. We don't need to motion track that, that's fine. And then we're going to alter the colour and the tone so it matches the orange of the original. But we're also going to go back and have another look at the LED light and also the words at the bottom which say Sector G12. That's obviously the area of Detroit. So we're going to increase the intensity of the flashing on the LED just so that it's a little bit more prominent. And then we can tweak the tone so that the orange is closer to the original. But we discussed that perhaps there would be scan lines on this display using the technology of the time. So we've added some scan lines. Those are the little horizontal lines that run across the image itself. And then we have the final shot. We've also motion tracked and placed it in the wide shot as well, just for continuity purposes.
At all times, one of these. What about tracking? You check his exact location at all times with one of these. How does he eat? Let's start with tracking.
Now this brings us to Robocop's targeting system. Now, again, you may not notice this, but every single sequence that involves the targeting system, the rape sequence as well, and also the warehouse shootout and the baby food, the target doesn't meet the right side of the frame. There's a gap. So we're going to go back and correct this in all of those sequences. And we do this by extracting a small fragment of the target, usually from the left side of the screen, and we can mask that off and then superimpose it into the shot. And we don't really have to play with the motion because it's following the motion that appears in the shot when it runs normal.
Give me a grid. There. Target.
And as you can see, these are the shots where we've corrected that small gap in the targeting system. I don't know, it just feels cleaner and it feels more neat. This brings us to the confrontation with Clarence Boddicker. Now, when he throws Clarence Boddicker through the window, the pyrotechnics go off and shatter the glass before the stuntman makes contact. So we're going to tackle this by extracting a few frames before the stuntman enters shot, and we're going to mask that off. We're going to place it over the shot, and we're going to animate the mask so that it's around the stuntman and it slowly reveals the shattered glass as he makes contact. And then when we play that back, the pyrotechnics are gone and we have a cleaner composite.
What is this shit?
Now this brings us to the infamous, the most famous special effect, and that is the falling maquette of Dick Jones. Now, one thing everybody has always noticed with this is how elongated the arms are. It just seems completely disproportionate. So we're going to go back to the shot, and the first thing we have to do is extract Dick Jones. We'll do that on a frame by frame manipulation, where we're cutting around him, we're rotoscoping him frame by frame. It takes a long time, but it is ultimately worth it. Once we've done that, we're going to isolate the left and the right arms, and we're going to extract them as PNG image files. We're going to need them later. Now we have to prepare our background plate. We don't want Dick Jones in it, so we use Photoshop to reconstruct the area behind him, the concrete flags and such. And we also have these moving vehicles. They're very tiny in the frame, but they are there, so we'll deal with them later. But for now, we're just going to erase them. Now, we bring our extracted Dick Jones back in, and we're going to mask him off so that he has no arms. So we need to find the right join in the seam of his clothing to mask that off. Again, that takes a while, but once we've done that, we can bring the arms back in. Now, when Dick Jones enters the frame, the arms are out of shot, so we need those arms to come into the shot. So we go back to our PNG files, and we've adjusted their scale horizontally so that they are now in proportion with the body, and we've added a little motion blur and our famous puppet pins. The puppet pins are those little joints that we put at the anatomical joints of the skeleton, so that we can add a little tiny bit of movement as those arms come into the frame, just to sell its authenticity a little bit more. So by adding the pins, we can move them just a few frames, just so that the arms are not completely static as they enter the frame. Once we are happy with this, we can bring his full body back in, which is layered on top so that we don't see the join. And then we've taken it one step further. We really want this thing to look like Ronnie Cox, who plays Dick Jones. And the only place we could find his face in an open mouth position is in Total Recall. So we've taken a few frames of his face in Total Recall, we've masked it off, we've motion tracked the body fall, and we've adjusted the scale accordingly so that we can place his face over his maquette, just to give a photographic likeness of Ronnie Cox. Then we can go frame by frame, adjusting it, making sure it's proportionate to the rest of the body and it follows the same trajectory. Now we can bring our background plate back in. Now, as he enters the shot, there's a slight pull out of the camera and a focus pull. That happens in the original. So we're going to add that pull out by zooming in ever so slightly and adding a blur, a camera blur to the shot, which will pull focus. We've slightly extended the focus pull because it looks more naturalistic if we give it a few more frames as the body's falling away from the camera. It gives the camera time to pull focus. Just a few more frames, but just enough. And then we can bring Dick Jones back in, our new composited Dick Jones with Ronnie Cox's face. And once we're happy with that, we can play it back. There we go, and we've added the moving cars in the background as well. So, this has been our movie fix and update of Robocop, one of my favourite films of all time. We hope you enjoyed the fixes. If you wish to critique or add any comments, please do so. By all means, subscribe to the channel. We're always open to suggestions, so if you have any other shots you'd like fixed, or perhaps you want to make any suggestions about some of the current fixes, by all means, please do. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Special thanks goes out to Movies Remastered. Check out their channel, they got loads of great videos, and they're doing some work on Rise of Skywalker at the moment, which is pretty impressive. So thanks to them for some creative collaboration. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and join us again for another movie fix from 00 Productions.